Hi there, good evening and welcome to This Is Ibrox, this is your Rangers podcast. My name's Scott Paterson. It's Sunday night. If you're joining us on your Sunday night, we're really grateful for your time. Particularly, we're aware there's a music festival on the telly, so I'm glad you're taking time out to come and listen to us. Big night, lots to discuss tonight. We speak about the new away kit, which was launched last week. We speak about various transfer rumours, some Ridvan chat, some Tom Lawrence chat, who seems to be back into the swing of things, and we also have a headline discussion which is around the possible season-long signing of Abdallah Sima. So we'll get to that a little bit later on, and indeed as the show goes on, welcoming our two guests tonight. Scott Mitchell joins us. Hi Scott, how are you, buddy?
Very well, mate. Hoping to get this wrapped up very quickly so we can all go and listen to Elton John sing.
Who loves a bit of Elton on a Sunday night? Goodness me. And joining us as well, it's Kieran Wallace. Hi Kieran, how are you, buddy?
I'm good, thanks. Yourself?
Yes, very well, thank you. Listen, you are both very welcome. Good to have you on. It's Scott Paterson taking you through for the next hour or so. If you aren't following us on our social media, I recommend you do. We are, of course, available on Twitter at This Is Ibrox, Instagram at This Is Ibrox, and This Is Ibrox on Facebook. If you are following us on our YouTube channel, please like and subscribe, leave a comment. Indeed, get yourself involved in the comments tonight. Hi to Matthew on Facebook, who leaves us a very special "We Are the People," which of course we are. Listen, guys, let's get straight into it. The summer means only one thing, and it's really, really important that we know what kits we're going to be turning out in the new season. I openly admit I've got the home one already. The away one last week, Kieran, didn't jump out at me instantly. However, I've also bought that one. Loads of concept kits were flying around, of course, and lead up to things being released. Where are you on the away kit and the general kit so far this season?
I like it. I'm very much of the opinion with football shirts that the plainer they are and the more solid looking, the better. I think especially the home top, I've struggled to see a bad sort of review on the home top. It seems to be extremely popular. The away one along with that, both tops look very, I don't know, I hate to say plain, but very simple in design. The away top, a wee bit of blue and red through the pinstripes at the bottom, but yeah, I'm a fan of it. I really do like it. I'm a bit tight to pay 70 quid for it, though, so I've not got any yet. But no, I'm a big fan of it. I like an away kit. I remember, I think it was around about 2000, like the millennium, we brought out the white Nike kit.
Aye.
And it was just basically all white, a nice wee trim around the sleeve and a V-neck sort. Well, not like a V-neck, it was like a tight collar and the most simplest of shirts, and it was a cracker. So I don't say it reminds me of that, but it's simple but effective, and yeah, very nice shirt.
Scott Mitchell, you're obviously the guy that looks after all of our design stuff for This Is Ibrox, and probably designing kits is one of the few things that have recently we've not asked you to do. What's your take on the two kits that have been released so far? You fans of them both?
Big fan. Very much like what Kieran was saying, the simple design I think is a lot better for me. I'm a big fan of, you know, an all white kit especially. I think everybody likes to look at teams like Real Madrid, etc. Just all white, plain, very, very striking when you're looking at it. So, for me, big fan of it. Definitely not going to be buying it at 70 quid, just like Kieran was saying. A bit too old for that. I've just hit 30, so it's not for me at this age. But 100%, I don't see any issue with the Castor kits. A lot of people are very critical of them, but for me, you know, it's good quality.
And interesting, I read something last week that Castor are really hitting out the park now, as far as I'm concerned, with kits. The Newcastle kit for this season is an absolute beauty. It's a cracker. And I think that, listen, over the fullness of time, they will struggle to deal with demand, depending on how many strips clubs are licensed and are meant to issue. There'll be at least another one that'll come from us, I'm sure. And I've heard a whisper that there's a third kit on the way that could be along the lines of maybe blue and orange stripes for the third kit, which would be quite interesting to see. Takes me back to a time when we had guys like Hateley and Goff, etc. playing, so we look forward to that. There you go. Absolutely. Absolutely, not a million miles off of that, my friend. You're absolutely spot on. Listen, guys.
In your third kit, Scott.
Exclusively revealed.
So, listen, what I want to get on to, guys, we've got quite a bit to discuss tonight. the news that broke during the night and is a headline for the pod tonight, indeed, is that a transfer seemingly close, a season-long loan, seems to be on the verge with Brighton and Hove Albion for Abdallah Sima. Senegalese full international, 22 years old, moved to Brighton from Slavia Prague back in 2021. And his time here, he's been loaned out to Stoke, riddled with injury there, went to France, to Angers, up until very recently. In fact, I think just over the weekend, this weekend indeed, he's announced that his time over there is came to an end and he is seeking a new adventure. New adventure, I think, points to potentially being in Glasgow. Kyran, I've done all the obvious things. We've looked at YouTube. We've sort of done all the obvious analysis that we all do as football fans. He looks a bit raw, I think, to be perfectly honest with you. But it's clearly someone that can play either side and through the middle. So he's a danger in that sense.
Yeah, I remember back to when he played against us for it was Slavia Prague, wasn't it? At the infamous game at Ibrox as well. But it was one of the ones I think I actually spoke to my friend about him, who's an Arsenal fan, because if I'm right, I think Arsenal had a wee bit of interest in him at the time because he was pretty young then. And around about that time as well, I can remember when we played against Slavia Prague thinking to myself, this is the first time in a long time where we've been outplayed in Europe. I thought they were excellent, aside from Bayer Leverkusen the season before. And he led the line very well that night, pulled the ball in well, like he was very pacey. But again, it fits the profile, 22 years old. He ticks that box of he's maybe lost his way a wee bit. Seems to be with every signing that we're getting. So yeah, the usual YouTube clips look good. I think his goal that stood out for me was his finish against Brendan Rodgers' Leicester. So a wee bit more of that if he comes. But I looked up and it said that his contract's up for Brighton. I think it's 2025. So if he was to come here on a year's loan deal and does well, and we have got that option to buy, you're talking only a year left on his contract. So there would be the potential for further, but again, I don't know if a 22-year-old's moving here from the Premiership to stick around. But let's wait till we get him in the door first. I'm getting a wee bit ahead of myself.
Scott, one of the things that sort of jumps out at me is, and I think Michael Beale has said previously, and we know that I don't want to get in the argument with whether Michael Beale says too much or doesn't say enough, or he should zip his mouth almost on occasion. But I think he has said previously that loans are something that he would maybe rather avoid almost. I think off the back of the Malik Tillman sort of experience that we've just had, and I don't want it to turn into a debate about whether he's coming back to play. I think it's quite obvious rather that ship sailed. He doesn't want to come back and play in Scotland, which is fair enough. We wish him all the best. But it's definitely a market that I think Rangers can look at and shop in and do it with a bit of confidence, because Bayern have sent their player over, and to all intents and purposes, it looks like over the fullness of time, Bayern will be more cash rich because they're going to make money on a player that has effectively had his opening spell of football quite successfully at Rangers.
Absolutely. And I think touching on the loan market, we've had relative success, I think, under Gerrard, Beale and Gio in the loan market. You look at Ryan Kent, he initially came in on loan, and again, people could debate whether he was worth the £7 million outlay, but I think at the time and what he brought, winning 55, etc., I think that was a success. The loan market is one that inevitably we're going to have to utilise this season. Look at the scale of the rebuild that we need. We need to bring in so many players. It's not realistic for us to say we're going to spend money on every single player that comes in. We're going to have frees. We're going to spend a bit of money like we have done in Dessers. But Sima might be coming in that loan role, and it might be one of the only loans that we bring in this season. But it could be crucial. Looking at his stats, they don't read very, very well, unfortunately. I think he was on loan at Angers last season. I don't know if I've butchered that name there. 30 appearances, 4 goals. So I'm not overly excited by him. But, I do remember that Slavia Prague game, like Kyran was saying. And again, if we put to one side the issues that came out of that game, which I think have been kind of talked about at great length in the past, they kind of played us off the park at times. And as Kyran said, he led the line very, very admirably in that game. And I think potentially could be a good signing for us.
Do you know what, Scott? I'm going to stick with you, Scott. One of the things that we spoke about before we started is that I almost think that assuming we go with a front three for next season, I almost wonder if Michael Beale looks at the setup that Liverpool has, and rather than having one designated sort of main man up front, he's looking at the three, so has a 9 or a centre one of the three to be supported with goals from either side. And we've never had that before. I mean, we've always thought that we've had good support from, as far as assists are concerned, for either side, but we've always had almost a striker, a number 9, someone in there. Even when you go back to guys like Boyd, etc., who scored all his goals. Do you know what I mean? I know Kenny Miller's supporting more often than not, but I think in recent times we've never had sort of great support from either sides. I wonder now, Scott, if Beale's maybe looking to try and supplement the goals from a number 9 and a centre figurehead, if you like, with goals from either side, from left and right wing.
Again, you'd imagine so. If you look at the stats of the players that we're linked with, and the one that we've signed, Lammers doesn't come with a great stock for goal scoring, and that's been kind of widely documented. Dessers, again, if he's one that comes in, not a proven goal scorer really. But if we've got that rotation, you might not, as you say, you might not need that number 9, that focal point. Alfredo Morelos was often a focal point for us, and he didn't do a lot of his work inside the box apart from goal scoring, but a lot of his work and his best work was outside the box and dragging in players and drawing them out of position for other players to go forward. You then had people like Ryan Kent who, couldn't finish a plate of chips. So potentially you're bringing in different players. Morelos could, and then some. But if we're going with this rotation, you likened it to Liverpool. I think that's probably a good analysis there. If we were to go with that, then absolutely, I wouldn't be worried. We've got goals from all areas of the pitch right now. I know he's not done it for us yet, but you see Nico Raskin out there scoring for the Belgian under-21s. There's goals in this team for all areas. So maybe we don't need a number 9 to score us 20, 30 goals a season. Maybe it has to come collectively for the group.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, Blue Nose John is watching tonight on YouTube. Hi, Blue Nose John. And he brings up a really good point. His scoring rate at Slavia Prague, which effectively got him the move to Brighton, was a goal one one in every 2 games. So a really, really good record they had prior to coming over here in a league that I wouldn't say is hugely different as far as quality is concerned. So it'll be interesting. Kieran, I wonder. And this is a difficult one. I don't want to get too far into the weeds with this because I think it's all about opinion. How do you feel about us having maybe forwards that are almost deemed to be project players as opposed to having one guy that is going to score 10, 15, 20 goals a season? Does that give you a concern even this early on in pre-season?
Not really, no, not really. I think Michael Beale is a guy who prides himself on a project and making players better and getting more out of players that can almost punch above their weight. And I think that's probably what's frustrated him about, for example, Glenn Kamara, where he's come back in and thought, right, okay, he's maybe lost his way a wee bit here, I can get him back, and it's not happened. But I've went off course a wee bit there. In terms of a striker who's on loan to us, I just don't see it as purely being on loan. I think as well, which hasn't been mentioned, is that the effectiveness of bringing a guy in on loan who we might actually be interested in on a permanent is that it won't be deemed against us this season for financial fair play that we seem to struggle with last year. So it may not be that he is just a project player. It might be that we are signing him, but it's possibly on loan just now. But it is safe from a business point of view if it is, like one of the folk in the comments said, a try before you buy situation. So for me, we've seen what he can do. And for John, who mentioned that he scored 1 and 2 for Slavia, he must have been about 19 years old then.
Yeah,
that's phenomenal for a 19-year-old.
Absolutely. I think he's an exciting talent to be linked with. And you know what I mean? I don't want to go back to Tillman. But I think when Tillman came over, he didn't really have much to work with. So I think everyone largely accepts that this was his first season in sort of competitive football. So we didn't have a record to speak of about how good he was. We knew that he looked good technically when we seen him. We knew very early on that he could jump high, which everyone got stoners about. But I think over the fullness of time, it became more and more apparent what a good player he was. And again, you know what I mean? I go back to what I said earlier on. I think it's a signing that we should look at with a bit of positivity. I think he's versatile enough to come in and do a job for us. CF3 Loyal, good evening Douglas, good friend of mine. The year we won 55, Cameroon finished as top scorer from right wing. We need 2 number 9s, 2 goal scorers in our front 3. With I think is absolutely right. Listen, I was at a night with Mark Haitley, courtesy our friend Jamie Brown, the World Ranger, in the chat. And one of the things he said at the night, and he was absolutely adamant, for as long as we have a right back who scores more than our strikers, we're going to have a problem. There has to be higher goal scoring input coming from the proper end of the pitch, and that has to start in the Michael regime from sort of the beginning of August. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Listen, it's a good chat. I think it's going to be one that's going to rumble on. Sorry, Kieran.
Can I touch on something as well with that front 3 and the folk that we've been linked with? We've been so used to having a focal point and a 9 and 2 wingers, almost your Matondo, Ken, Wright. These guys who seem to be wingers that play alongside that 9. Going by the guys that we're looking at in terms of your Sima, your Lammers, Dessers, they're all big guys. It looks like we're going to be going with a physical front 3 and not so much these wingers. Yeah. And it would not surprise me if we were 3-5-2, but you mentioned Mark Haitley there, and all the guys I'm talking about there are all 6 foot plus, and someone's just said it in the comments as well. Historically, we've always had a good big, not so much a target man, a good technically able striker who's big. Dado Purcell, Mark Haitley, even Daniel Kuzan, to name a few.
Yeah, absolutely. No, listen, I completely agree with you. It's an area that needs sorted. I think it's been a wee while since we've had a striker that I think we all almost laud down to their performance on the pitch. I think, do you know what I mean? Everyone loved Alfredo for a variety of different reasons, but I think the reality is the last 18 months he's been missing, and we've not had a striker to, do you know what I mean? He's the man. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? When you get new tops come out, you would go and get number 9 and whoever it was, the number 9 across the back. I'm thinking about wee Reece in the chat. You know what I mean? When Boyd signed all these times, you had the way getting his top with Boyd in the back of it, you can imagine it. And I'm being facetious, Reece, of course, but it's more of a, do you know, we don't have that striker that makes you think, you know, if I get a new kit, number 9 and his name's got in the back of it. We don't have that just now, and I think it's really important that we do have that for the new season starting. Listen, Kieran, I'll stick with you. One of the things that came out in the press over here last week, I think it was a Rangers Review that ran with it initially, was that Ridvan Yilmaz, sorry, I should say, had been speaking to the press in his native Turkey, and a couple of sound bites that came out of that. I think, importantly, at the moment, he doesn't have any intention to return to Turkey or any intention to try and manipulate a move to Turkey, which I think is good news. He refers to, and I'll come to Scott Mitchell on this shortly, he refers to the physicality of the game, which I think he found quite bizarre when he arrived at the club. But I think the headline in the middle that everyone's maybe taken a little bit more cognizance of was that when he spoke about Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, he said, we were more like friends with Giovanni. And then he refers to Michael Beale as a little bit more serious in and around the training pitch. I think that's a really interesting quote. Giovanni didn't use Redvan a lot because, of course, he was injured, but it was very much his signing. It speaks to a persona that Giovanni almost gave I think I referred to the Jekyll and Hyde sort of media sort of face. Sometimes he would come across as not wanting to reveal much at all when he was speaking to, not necessarily the fans, but do you know what I mean? We all get a lot of our stories from, whether it's fan media or written press or speaking press. That's where we get the information from. He would never give a lot. You can't almost imagine him as being, and this is going to sound unfair, I know it was, almost being your pal on the training pitch, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think it comes down to personality. I think he's compared the two of them, and I think Beale more understands the job at hand and the pressure that he's under, whereas I don't think Gio quite grasped that domestically.
Yeah.
So to me, it kind of sounds like Gio's quite happy to be their pal, but when things weren't going right, it didn't look like the players had his back. It was obvious that they were unhappy about something, but it's a strange one for me when I'm going to maybe 10 years' time look back in the Van Bronckhorst era. I really don't know how I'll look back on it, because domestically, we were a shambles from the word go when he came in. But in Europe, we were just a different animal. So it is a strange one with Yilmaz to come out and say that he was more of a friend on the pitch, on the training pitch, sorry. I don't really get where he's going with that. It's almost as if he's thrown him under a bus a wee bit, I think, to say that he didn't quite have the discipline. Almost to an extent saying he lost the dressing room, because it sounds like he didn't have a grasp over the players, but the way that Beale does now.
Aye.
That's the way it sounds to me. But touching on something you said at the start of Yilmaz there as well, Scott, I've never seen a signing come in and within his first year been linked to go home so much in all my life.
Exactly.
It's strange. But I like him. I like what I've seen towards the end of the season, especially the Old Firm game. I think he stood up and made himself counted there and proved that the physicality wasn't going to get the better of him. He looked excellent. I'm looking forward to seeing him next season.
Scott Mitchell, I think one of the things that Ridvan and I've heard wee bits and pieces. I did believe he was homesick. I didn't think he was particularly enjoying it in Glasgow. He is a relatively young guy. I think that's absolutely fair. But Kieran's absolutely right. He was linked with moves back home, and I appreciate it maybe just came from the Turkish press. I get that. I understand that. But there was link after link for a good sort of 3 or 4 months just shortly after he arrived almost. I mean, he was almost instantly linked with a loan back to Besiktas the minute his rear end had touched the ground in Glasgow. So I think it's good that he's sort of said he's happy to stay. I will quote, he's no plans to return for now. For now, that's could mean anything, to be perfectly honest with you. And when you look at, if you look at it from a financial perspective, he is unquestionably someone who I think Rangers could make money from. So it'll be interesting to see how long for now really is. The one thing I want to speak to you about, Scott, is he did get a bit of a June when he arrived, as far as the competitiveness of the game, and he has revealed himself that the physicality generally really surprised him when he arrived in Scotland.
Yeah, and he was very complimentary in the interview about Scottish football. Actually, he says that the physical quality is higher in Scotland, and strength in Scotland is at a different level. And I think when you think about Scottish football, you realise it's a strong game, it's a quick game, but you don't think that it's on a different level to Turkish football. I think everybody looks at that and thinks it's a second tier league, and we're maybe a third tier league if we're honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to hear him say that, but it makes sense. He comes in, he's not physically ready to play the game. He doesn't play games, and then that's where the Turkish media just start putting 2 and 2 together and making 5 and saying, oh, he's not fitting in, he's homesick, he wants to go home. Yeah, Redvan Yilmaz is going to be here for the next season at least, if not a little bit longer, but undoubtedly, as you say, he's one of our most sellable assets. Early 20s, Turkish international already, and the boy's an absolute gem. I'm a bit worried when you're hearing that Borna Barisic is getting a contract renewal, because that suggests to me there's going to either be a bit of rotation between him and Ridvan, or that Ridvan might not be getting as much game time next season. If that's the case, I'll be really annoyed. I hope Ridvan is the starting left back next season, and that Borna, if anything, is going to be second choice, maybe even third choice. Who knows?
So it's funny you say that, Scott, because that's where I was going to sort of come to you next. I assume he's your first choice left back for next season?
100%. I mean, the one thing we saw when he first came in is technically how good he is. I don't know if I've been conditioned because I've been watching Borna for so long, but to see a left back actually go on and take somebody on and beat them with a bit of skill and a bit of pace, it's a breath of fresh air. I think the boy is all the makings of being a very, very good left back for us. I was going to go and say he's going to be as good as Arthur Newman. He's not that level at all, but he's got the makings of a very, very good left back, and it excites me when I see him in the team. I don't know if everybody else feels like that, but he's just something different. Even for Tav on the right, he's so different to what Tav does on there. He's just very technically gifted, and he understands the game very, very well as being a quick wee guy. If he's going to be bulking up and becoming a wee unit, absolutely brilliant as well.
So Kieran, he would absolutely be my first choice left back for next season. I think he for the games in the split, I thought he played really well. I thought, like you, I felt the game against Celtic Ibrox, he was excellent. He was one of many excellent players that afternoon, but I thought that afternoon he was really good. CF3 Loyal Doogie is back in the chat again. Hopefully Redvan is practicing his final ball this summer. It's the one big development area of his game. Borna is a great model in that regard. And I think that's true. I mean, I think it's unfair to dismiss Borna Barisic. I think he is probably the best sort of deliverer of the ball in the squad. He can deliver a mean ball from either side. How many times have we seen goals from a Borna Barisic, the Hollander header against Celtic a couple of years ago, you know what I mean, from that wonderful corner kick. It's one thing that Borna absolutely has up his sleeve. Kieran, would you go in with him as number one left back for next season as things stand just now?
Yeah, for me it would be Ridvan. If we're talking about a rebuild and we're talking about freshening up, I think Ridvan gives that almost that dimension that Beale looks for in his style of play, where he can get forward.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Borna Barisic as well, but some of the big games last year, I felt that Borna was very safe and he went back to his centre-back quite often, where someone a bit more mobile and agile with a bit of pace about them would go forward. And I think Ridvan gives us that. He gives the opposition fullback something to think about, that he's going to bomb forward, he's going to get in the positions. And I think Dougie makes a great point about his final ball. But again, I can't see he's crossing the ball as much under Beale with his... We're really going to see style of play coming in with his team almost. I felt under Van Bronckhorst, I think everybody will be the same, that we threw balls into the box far too much from crossing opportunities. So
aimless.
Yeah, it's what, sorry?
They were aimless balls more often than not as well.
Exactly. So someone that can hit the byline and almost create chances in that sense is what Yilmaz gives us, but Borna doesn't really give us that. Sometimes he can be a bit of a stinking violet when the chips are down. Don't get me wrong, I actually think Barisic had a half-decent season, probably one of our better players.
Listen, something that I can't sort of stroll by. On the week when we bring back the good doctor, Ibrox RFC72 suggests maybe the £5 to £7 of muscle added on for Redvan Yilmaz was the reason for his hamstring injury. And best to walk away from that, I think. No, listen, it's a great chat. I do think Yilmaz will go into the new season as the starting left back. I think he should be, as I say. I reckon that based on his performances in the split, I think you can safely say that it's something that he absolutely deserves. And I'll be quite happy if he's down the left and James Tavernier is down the right, to be perfectly honest with you. One other person who I think we're all going to be happy to see coming back for next season, Kieran, is Tom Lawrence. Seems to be, and I want to use the terminology that seems to be something that all the cool kids are using nowadays, he's cooking. And it seems that he's back in pre-season. He seems to be... Sorry, Scott. Come on, mate. I'm older than the pair of you, so I'm trying. He seems to be getting himself back into a fashion that at least he's going to be ready to get involved pre-season.
Yeah, that part is more Tom Kitchen than it is Tom Lawrence, Scott. It'd be wonderful to see him back. We've seen that goal at Hibs away last year. We've seen his goal against PSV, then the one off the bar away from it. All the signs that he can really kick on and do well at Rangers and maybe even play a part in that front three. So it was great to see that. I actually went in and I looked at the complex that he was training at. I think it's called the Campus. And if I remember rightly, this is where Gerrard took the players back in one of his first seasons here.
I think you could be right.
I was trying to look for other wee nuggets to see if anyone had posted anything of him there to see what kind of training he was doing. But delighted to see him back. People don't think about the side of the player when he's out. We always just think about the team and how much we miss them, but it must have just been a torrid time for him with the injuries. And I think, is this his second operation, or is this just to clear things up from the original injury? So
I know that, again, I'll refer to JB in the chat. He's got better knowledge about this than me. I think it's his second op, is what I would say. And I don't know if the first stop was, I don't want to say correct, but I don't think it was, to be perfectly honest with you. I think it's good to see him back into, often you hear players talk about getting back on the training pitch and getting back on the green with the sort of ball at their foot and all that. Tom Lawrence hasn't done a lot of that in about a year. So I don't think you can underestimate the effect of just him getting back onto the grass, Scott Mitchell, and having that opportunity to familiarise himself again with things. And I know that sounds pretty nonsensical, but for a guy who's not been able to strike a blow, as I say, for the best part of a year, and I don't want to say he'll be like a new player, However, he's really going to be, isn't he?
Effectively is a new player. I mean, what did we get out of him? It must be less than 10, 15 games we got out of him last season.
Yeah.
So it is going to be like a new signing. The worry for me is, does he fit into the Beale system? Because we don't know that yet. We know that he worked in the Geo system. We know he was effective in the Geo system. But I'd be interested to see where he fits in Beale's mind and if he does fit in Beale's sort of mind. He's one that I think whenever he's putting their squad lists together, you forget about him very, very easily because it's as if he's not been there. But as Kieran rightly said, some of the goals that he scored last season, some of the positions that he got himself in, he's a fantastic player, a very, very good player. And I hope I'm not bigging him up more than he should be here, because I know we've got a habit of doing that. When players are injured, they get better every week, that sort of thing. But I do think that Tom Lawrence could play a decent role next year if given the opportunity. But time will tell, really, with that one, unfortunately.
Yeah, and Scott, Mitchell, I'll stay with you. Interestingly, Rangers on Tour referred to Lawrence and Hadji almost being, I assume, Rangers on Tour means managed the same way as far as our recovery, etc. is concerned. I think it's a really fair point. I'm still not entirely convinced Hadji's going to be around next season, to be perfectly honest with you. However, I think that's absolutely fair. Hadji was kind of very slowly edged back into game time last season. And listen, I think both are excellent players, but you're right, it'll be interesting to see where, indeed if, both fit into the Michael Beale way of playing.
Absolutely. On Hadji, I'm starting to lean towards the same as yourself, whether he's going to be here next year, next season, this season. It's in a few weeks' time. I should call it this season, really, shouldn't we?
Yeah, I know.
It's weird. Hadji, for me, I'd expect him to be able to hit the ground running, but there's doubts in my mind over his overall fitness levels now after that injury. There's Ross chiming in. Thank you very much for watching, Ross. I remember was it Hibs away that Hadji started and he just looked completely off it. Until his goal, I believe. I don't know whether he's going to be able to hit the same heights that he did pre-injury. I don't know if we're going to see, Braga levels from Yanis Hadji, but if he can get anywhere near that, again, he could be an effective player. But I'm with you on that one, Scott. I could potentially see him nearing the exit door. I think the Galatasaray rumours are never going to go away when it comes to Yanis Hadji.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I think one of the guys in the chat, Gav Kelly, actually indeed refers to Hadji, the brand Hadji is a great for Rangers to have, you know what I mean? But we're a football club and we need to play. So it's great that he's, do you know what I mean? Handsome guy. He's Georgie Hadji's boy. He's a very, very good footballer, but we need him to play. And do you know what I mean? I appreciate he's had the really bad injury, but he's definitely not a signing that, or he's not a player rather, that I think will be a first team selection for next season. So again, another interesting one, and one to keep an eye on between now and the transfer window slamming shut between now and I think it's the end of August when that shuts, something like that, isn't it? Yeah. Listen, that takes us quite nicely into transfer rumours. The two that are obvious now, and Kieran, I'm going to give the floor to you because I know you're desperate to speak to us about José Cifuentes. Out of contract on the 1st of July. He is out of contract, I think, on the 1st of July, which allows him to sort of discuss a new contract with another. I'd be very surprised if the move to Rangers isn't close, considering how long we've been speaking about that now.
Yeah, I think I'm of the opinion that, come on, can we just get this over and done with and push it through? It just seems to have rumbled on. And I think it might have been Gav as well said in the chat the other day that didn't he play with Ecuador and flew home through the night and then played with LAFC like 70 minutes the next day? Like, that is crazy in terms of fitness. And you think about things like sports science where players might need a rest. Maybe I'm looking at that too much, but he played 90 minutes last night as well for LAFC. So if we are that far down the line with it, then you'd be saying to them, right, come on, if this transfer is going ahead, then he shouldn't be playing. So we're obviously not that far down the line. I believe it's that we've probably agreed terms with him and his representative. You know that obviously we can't talk to him till 1st of July, but these things do go on.
Of course.
But in terms of the transfer, you know what we're like. We're probably going to negotiate a fee right up until the 31st of August.
Yeah.
So, yeah, in terms of Cifuentes, one of the ones that would excite us, I'll be really honest, the signings have been good so far, but there's not really one that excites me as much as the Cifuentes rumour.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed we can get this one over the line soon enough. But I believe, like yourself, it's going to be around about the 1st of July when you can be a wee bit more vocal about speaking to players.
Absolutely. Scott Mitchell, it was interesting to hear Michael Beale said that, and I think this was actually around about when the Cifuentes story started to break and started to gallop a little bit. Michael Beale actually said, you know what I mean, there may be one or two that we're just going to have to be patient on, and everyone will find out about them over the fullness of time, but there is going to have to be a bit of, do you know what I mean, big deep breaths until this actually gets signed, sealed and delivered.
Probably. It's worrying. I hadn't even thought about it until Kieran's mentioned it there, though. But if this is one that drags on, then potentially we could have a Cantwell and Raskin situation on our hands there, where the players came in too late and we really needed them about a month before. If that's the case with this one, then we just need to push the boat out, because I know a little bit about Cifuentes. Signed him for Rangers on my Football Manager save, if anybody wants to know. I'm also in an LA hat today for Cifuentes. So I'm excited by him as well. I just think he can add a different dimension in that midfield. I mean, a midfield of Cantwell, Raskin and Cifuentes, that gets your plums pumping really when you're thinking about it. So it's a sign, I think, that we really need to push the boat on that one. But Beale's right, we do still need to remain patient. We need to temper our expectation as fans, because yes, we want him in the door, but if it's a difference between paying 1 million and 1.5 million, you just save £500,000 there, and we're a business at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Scott Mitchell, I'll stay with you. Dessers is the one that's kind of dragged on a little bit as well, and do you know what I mean? He almost, I referred to our forwards almost being kind of project players. He's 28 years old. I don't think we can afford for him to be a project player, to be perfectly honest with you. If he is coming in, I think he's going to have to be one of the forwards that you need to get goals out of. I don't think he can afford to bring in a guy at 28. Cremonese, I think, are wanting certainly north of 3.5 million to bring him in. If you're sort of putting that outlay on him, he has to come and score goals.
Absolutely, but again, we'd say that about every player that's brought in. We'll say it about Lammers as well. Lammers has to come in and do the business, whether that's scoring goals or creating goals. He has to come in and hit the ground running, especially with the outlay for these players. So it's not exclusive to Dessers. I don't know enough about Dessers to say whether I think he's going to be good or not, unfortunately, but he has to come in and hit the ground running, and that's where Michael Beale, and it is all on Michael Beale now because there's no Ross Wilson to hide behind. Absolutely. That's where Michael Beale has to get it right, especially for spending money. Otherwise, if he doesn't, it's his arse in there. He's going to get the one that gets kicked.
Yeah, and listen, Kieran, I think that's a really good point that Scott makes. The onus, if you like, of this transfer window is 100% absolutely on Michael Beale. Previously, when transfer windows maybe haven't went according to plan, and we've done a bit of finger wagging at sort of Ross Wilson previously, the spotlight in this case is absolutely and very much on Michael Beale. He's, I assume, would be identifying a vast majority of the players to go in. We know that he's going armed with a presentation. We know that he's going meeting these guys. We know that he's going speaking to them and bigging up the club and hoping that they buy into what he's trying to do. We've heard the comments from Sterling and Butland. Kieran Dowell's referred to just how that approach, I think, was one of the main drivers for them to come up the road here. So the pressure's absolutely on him. These are his players that he's effectively bringing in.
Yeah, 100%. And the funny thing is, I could guarantee that some of these targets had been identified before he came in. So some of them will be Ross Wilson targets, but we'll never find out. But as you guys say, it's all on Beale. He's going to be the guy that basically either cops it or takes all the plaudits for when it comes off. So we'll speak positively like that. But I've been impressed. I like what I've seen so far. I like that we're going after sort of young players that are yet to flourish in their career. Yes, okay, you look at Lammers, and we've already spoke of Sima, that they've lost their way a wee bit. Throw Dessers in there as well. But this is a good league to come up and revitalise your career. We've seen that with Todd Cantwell. But like you mentioned as well, Nico Raskin, that's the type of signing that we need to make, not as in like a centre mid from Belgium, more as in a promising talent that is going to get sold on for a profit and is going to sell on with a sell-on fee that we're going to make money on down the line. I think that's where the team across the city seem to have an advantage, that every time a player's sold on, they've got that sell-on clause. We need to be very much in that market as well. So, listen, I'm happy with the guys we've been linked with, Dujon Sterling especially. Kieran Dow's probably one that's going to take folk by surprise in terms of there's no pressure on him. No, I don't think anybody's expecting much from Dow, but everything you read about him is he's a very, very talented player. So there's another one that's probably going to fit into that Tom Lawrence bracket where we didn't really know what to expect from Tom Lawrence unless you watched Derby all these seasons.
Absolutely.
He then becomes a fan favourite. I think we'll probably see that with Dow.
Much of the guys that we've been linked with so far have been on the offensive side of things. There was a story that broke this morning. I think it was Mailsport that broke it online to say that discussions that we have been having, Kieran, with the boy Panzo at Nottingham Forest, was of course on loan at Coventry last season, seemed to have broken down based on the money that Ross Wilson is looking for Rangers to pay Nottingham Forest for Panzo. Listen, I think this boy's a good defender. I think he'd be a good option to bring in. If he's coming in, you would imagine that Ben Davies has to be one of the guys that will be disappearing this summer in some way, shape or form.
Yes, I'm going to completely disagree with you here, Scott.
Okay.
I seen Panzo in that playoff with Coventry.
Yeah.
I didn't really want to judge him on the error that he made that nearly cost him the game there and then.
Yeah.
So when we were linked, I thought, right, okay, I can't be the only one that judges him here. I watched as much footage as I can on YouTube, trying to convince myself that he looked a good player. I thought he looked terrible. I thought in the air he looked absolutely awful. So the fact that things are starting to cool on it, I'd be quite happy at that. In terms of Ben Davies, I think that's one that the club are seeing that maybe we can get money for. Maybe we can recoup some of the money that we've made. And again, smart business buying a young English centre-back that's done well in the Championship, then they're knowing that we could probably get that money back for him. So if they see that as, right, okay, we can get 4 million in there. 4 million's good money for Ben Davies. If we can get that sort of figure for him, that can be reinvested elsewhere. 4 million would probably get you Dessers right now.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I think that's where they have to be. They have to be clever with any cash they bring in, and they have to probably be smarter with it when they put the cash out. Scott Mitchell, Aaron Trusty is another name that's kind of been linked over the last wee while for that defensive perspective. We're obviously looking at guys who have came through youth levels at big clubs down south and maybe spent a bit of time out on loan last season, which I think is quite good. I wonder what it means for, if you're John Shooter, for example, who had a cracking end to last season, really good end to last season, he's looking in and he's seeing sort of young defenders that are coming up for places like Arsenal or Nottingham Forest, and they're playing at a level down there. I wonder if you're thinking, I wonder what I need to do to be considered the right. I don't think the Rangers fans particularly consider John Shooter, and I know that he's had his injury problems. I get that. The season before he came to Rangers was a cracking season at Hearts. Very, very good at Hearts. Hasn't been lucky this last season at Rangers. I think that's absolutely obvious to everyone. I just wonder what John Shooter has to do to be considered as a defensive partner to Connor Goldson.
I don't think he can do much more, if I'm totally honest. He's obviously had his brain fart moment at Parkhead, but he's recovered admirably from that. The performances he's put in since, I think, have been brilliant. He exercised his demons from that game by scoring against that lot. So, I mean, for me, John Shooter is definitely in the picture. He might not be number 2 centre-back. He might be number 3, but as Kieran rightly said earlier on, there's a possibility we go to a back 5 or a back 3, and then John Shooter's right back in the picture. Yeah. I think it's important, and I'm sure I've heard Beale mention this, but it's important that we do have a left-sided centre-half as well. He loves that idea, and I think as a team we love that idea as well. So it does highlight to me that since we're targeting Panzo, it highlights to me that Ben Davies probably is one for the departure lounge. Yeah. I wish Kieran had been a little bit more concrete on whether he liked Panzo or not. I'm kind of unsure. He thinks he's a good signing. But I think
here to sit in the fence.
But I think it's probably right. So Austin Trusty, I don't know much about him. I know he's an American boy, if I'm right in saying. Is he a left side defender as well then?
I think he can. I mean, I'm not entirely sure if he's completely left-sided, to be brutally honest with you, but there was a couple of guys, I watched Birmingham a couple of times last season for a variety of different reasons. And if we were going to sign a Birmingham defender that wasn't their own, I would much rather we went for the boy Sanderson, who was on loan there from Wolves, and I think has been sort of fleetingly mentioned in the past as well. I think it's an interest that's kind of disappeared, to be perfectly honest with you, considering the Trusty and Panzo interest has become a bit more concrete. But listen, I think if we were going to sign one of Birmingham's centre-halves that were on loan from a Premiership club, I would probably go with Sanderson. I think he looked a better defender generally, to be perfectly honest with you. Listen, that's really where we are as far as transfer rumours are concerned. There is one that's sort of appeared later on today for Danilo, who is at Feyenoord, and I think he could be the next name that we hear over the next sort of week to 10 days, particularly assuming the Dessers story maybe doesn't come off, or that move doesn't come off. He may be the next person that we go to. Kieran, I think importantly now, we're aware that the players return to pre-season training on Friday, which I would suggest is things like bleep tests and how was your summer, all that sort of high-five nonsense. Going into pre-season, the guys coming back, what do we think we still need between now and Friday? Not from a sort of transfer window perspective, because I think everyone appreciates that we need more bodies. What are you disappointed that maybe we don't have just now going into pre-season training and returning on Friday?
And I'm trying to think the best way to put this. I don't think a direct Ryan Kent replacement, but the only one that really sort of is a like for like that we've been linked with is Lewis Palmer, which is completely went dead silent on that. Right. So for me, we need to, I'm disappointed we've not brought someone in that role. To be perfectly honest, I think Bill spoke recently saying that we are ahead of ourselves. We're ahead of schedule in terms of transfers. So he'll be delighted with what we've got in so far. I'm quite happy with what we've got in so far. But again, I think we're still missing a striker, a winger, possibly centre midfielder. It looks very much like it will be Cifuentes. Again, though, he's not going to need a pre-season. He's played consistently across the past few months. So our focal point as a striker, because I think we're only 5 weeks away from our first game. You want to be getting him in the door, worked into the systems, properly game fit, because we don't know who it's going to be. If it is Dessers, then obviously the Dutch season ended at the same time as ours. He's going to need a pre-season. So it's interesting, but I'd say very much we need a winger. Not that I think we're going to play with natural wingers, but that sort of winger inverted into a 10, the way Kent was famously done. Yeah. Then again, the name Kemar Roof sort of splits opinion. So when they say a fit Kemar Roof, the Doc's back. So there's another one to consider. But no, we need a game changer. We need a creator, someone that can make something out of nothing the way that Kent did. We definitely need someone in that role. I would be stunned if we didn't bring someone in. I'd also be disappointed.
Scott, same question to you. Does the lack of new offensive faces, that doesn't sound right, new offensive talent between now and Friday to all the fancy cars rocking into Auchenhowie, does that give you concern that we don't have many new, I'll just say it, number 9s?
It does. I'm not offended by any of the faces, if that's where you were going initially with your question. It scares me a wee bit, because I know we were talking earlier, we don't need that focal point. Potentially we're going to have a rotation within the front three, but not having that number 9 for me, that striker, scares me a wee bit, because I'm just thinking during all the match practice or the training sessions, who are they sending these crosses into?
Aye.
Is that player then? If it's Kemar Roof, fantastic, but I don't see him, even with the magic doctor in there and all his coffee. I don't see Kemar Roof hitting 30 games a season, unfortunately. But yeah, number 9 for me is definitely the one.
Yeah. Listen, Scott Mitchell, it's always good to have you on. I appreciate you coming on. Height the summer, and we probably will finish so you can go and watch your idol on the telly. So listen, it's good to have you on. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks again, guys.
Kyran, good to see you as well, buddy. Good to have you on Sunday.
Always a pleasure, yeah. My first wee Sunday in a while. I've enjoyed it. I enjoy talking about transfers and transfer rumours. I think that's the one that everybody enjoys. I just hope we can get some of them over the line, especially, like you say, the offensive ones. I felt like we matched Celtic last season, defence to midfield. So if we can get these offensive ones in that are going to bang the goals in, then I'd be delighted. But no, thanks for having me again, Scott.
You're very welcome. Listen, on offensive signing, we should say that Gus Denham, one of our writers, has done an article across on our website. It's across at allthews.thisisibrox.wixsite.com. It's an analysis piece on Sam Lammers, which is well worth sort of 5 minutes of your time. Jump in there and have a look if you can. Don't forget, we are back on Wednesday night for the final pre-season show before the guys return to normal programming for us next week. And of course, the players are back in for pre-season on training. If you have enjoyed this tonight, please, by all means, continue to leave your comments, like and subscribe to the videos across on our YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribing there. Put the notifications on so you get a notification each time we go live. As I say, Ross is back on Wednesday. If you're not following us across the socials, we're available on Twitter and Instagram at This Is Ibrox, and we're also on Facebook at This Is Ibrox. I am back next week. Don't forget to check out Ross on Wednesday. Thanks for watching. Good night.